I had quite a hard time, memorizing how to pronounce it correctly. We had a full session, teaching me how to do that. And so he's a chief editor of Solo Junkie and, of course, a co-founder of Cultpix. And as you can see on his t-shirt. Hi, Patrick. And could you please maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, because I know you've got a very exciting one. So please.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to come and talk on the Friday. And thank you to all those who are tuning in and watching this. So hopefully make it worth your while before you rush off for the weekend. So yeah, my name is Patrick von Sychowski, and I am the co-founder of Cultpix, which is a global streaming website service for niche and genre film, classical ones. So we only go up to about 1991. So, but before that, you find everything on our website. So we've got spaghetti westerns, we've got sci-fi, we've got horror, we've got kung fu films, we've got nudie cuties, we've got Godzilla films, and it's the kind of things you wouldn't normally find on Netflix or the big streaming services. So it's a niche service, but it's a fun one.
That's true. Oh, when I was writing a piece about it, I called it Netflix for cool people. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I saw that. We're going to definitely use that.
No worries. But yeah, tell us a little bit like how you got there, because this is very niche, and without you, I would probably never stumble upon a project like that. And it was very, very interesting. I went there, I explored it. We had this huge discussion about one of the movies about mermaids. I'm not going to go into details, but that was a very steamy one. So tell us about it, how it all started.
Sure. Before I do that, maybe I'll show you a little bit so people have a kind of visualization of what it is I'm talking about. So I don't know if you can see my screen, but I'm going to switch over to see so you can have a view of the site itself. So I don't know if you can see it now.
Oh, not yet. Not yet.
So this is the top. You got our groovy logo up in the corner, and then we've got a carousel of the kind of top, the most recent films here. So I can.
Okay, wait a second, Patrick, because we cannot see yet. Let me see if I can share it. Okay, just a sec.
Share screen. There's a button here.
Yeah.
Okay, it helps if I knew. This is why we have smart technical people to do this for us.
There you go.
So we can focus on these kind of trashy films that you see now. Night Ice 2, today's film, erotic thriller from the early 90s. You'd find only on VHS or cable. Strange films like a documentary with Linda Blair from The Exorcist, the little cute girl teaching how to get revenge. A horror. This is a comedy cannibal film directed by Anthony Perkins, the star of Psycho. Wasn't a big hit, I tell you, but it's got a funny poster. Canadian cannibal film, 80s horror, nudie comedy. And then you can go, so for example, we try to have theme weeks, try to have fun. So we did a theme week of cannibal films. As you can see here, these are 5 of them. We've got a theme month of films that were only ever issued on VHS, obviously in cinema tubes sometimes, but they weren't deemed important enough to be issued on Blu-ray or let alone DVD. And then we have the kind of most watched films every week. And then we've got different genres, and we've got different partners like Something Weird Video, Vinegar Syndrome. And if I load a few more up here, we've got a section of films that anybody can watch for free. Then we go into science fiction, we go into horror, we go into fantasy. We've had over 800 films so far on the site. So there's a wide selection of films for people to choose from. So now I'm going to hide, go back to stop sharing screen.
Yeah. Okay, but that was great. I mean, not a lot of people, I think, know what it is about.
No.
So yeah, even for me, I mean, that was a very unique project that we got here. But yeah, I know that you're such a cinema enthusiast, and from a very young age, that was your passion. So tell us about that. How you got to love the movies so much, and
Sure,
what it gave you.
sure. Am I back to?
No, I think you should press the button um, right where you share the screen. There should be stop sharing somewhere there as well.
Unfortunately, you've gone into a small little icon, so
Okay.
ah,
Okay. Oh, right. There you go. I did
much
it for
better,
you.
much better. Um, yeah, so I've really worked in cinema and films for most of my adult life, but usually on the boring technical consulting side. So I've been a journalist, I've been a consultant, I've built post-production facilities in Europe and in Asia. And for a long time on the side, I had a hobby together with a Swedish partner and colleague of distributing old classic Swedish cult films. And we did it on VHS. That's how old the company was. We did it on DVD and Blu-ray. It started as a kind of film club showing cool films at midnight screenings. So it's a bit of a passion. And then having done that as a side gig for companies been running for 20 years, we then decided during the pandemic that we've talked about maybe launching a streaming service. And so we had a bit of time and we had a bit of money to do it. So said, let's do it. My colleague is always great in terms of energy, but also in terms of inspiration. He says, we don't need to ask for anybody's permission to do this. All we needed the films, and we had them, some of our own, some with partners that we worked with over the years. And we needed a good technology partner. And, it was a great coming together when we found out that one of the companies that I'd worked with in a different capacity, Film Grail, was able to help us out by, connecting us up with smart IT people who could build this site for us. And it really went from there. And I've been pleasantly surprised, having had real luck in terms of the kind of people we work with. They're really wonderful, smart, dedicated, talented, open, honest, enthusiastic in terms of the kind of things, requests we throw at them. But also the other thing that surprised me is that I shouldn't spread this maybe too widely, but it's actually surprisingly simple to launch a streaming service these days. As soon as you've got
Don't say it to anybody.
no, keep it our secret. But it's obviously you still need time, money, and the right kind of components. But what impresses me now is that with a good IT team, there's so much off-the-shelf tools that can be used online to help put the service together. So there's the payment platform, Stripe. There's the cloud hosting software, Cloudflare. All of these other bits and pieces, whether it's for geolocation or geo-blocking, which we try not to do much of, by the way, because we are in 195 countries. It just comes together. And then we use other tools such as MailChimp, obviously for mail outs, and we use Buzzsprout for podcasts. And it doesn't have to cost a fortune. And it doesn't need to take years and years to develop. So I think between us having the idea and saying, right, let's do it, to actually launching it was just over a year. And then we had about 2 months of a trial period during which we had members come on an invitation-only basis because we knew there were going to be bugs. There's always going to be bugs in the first iteration that you launch. So for 2 months, we kept it exclusive. We kept the price a bit lower for those who joined then and said, bear with us, not everything's going to be perfect, but we're trying to build a really, really cool service, and hopefully you want to be part of that journey. So initially people could join only signing up if they committed for a whole year for $49 US. Then after 2 months, we threw it open to the whole world. Anybody can come and become a Cultpix member. All they had to do is pledge their soul. They only have to take out their credit card and pay either $6.66 per month, or they could show that they're truly dedicated to these kind of culty niche films and paying $59 for a year. And then you get a discount, obviously, compared to if you only paid on a monthly basis. So there we are. it was, touch wood, we had small issues, but on the whole, we've been very, very lucky that it's gone as smoothly as it did.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know the story, and it's incredible. I mean, it's really rare that you get it right on the first try, and you had this opportunity, and it's funny you mentioned a cinema club, but Cultpix very fast grew into so much more. And I know that initially there were about 80 movies or something like that, but then
Yeah.
in like 2 months you brought so many, and now there are 800.
Yeah, I think we were slightly below 400 when we launched, which would have been in April of last year. And now we're well over 800. And I think we'll be up to 1,000 before the end of the year. Not just movies, we've got shorts, we've got television series, we've got loops, we've got obviously documentaries, all manner of things. But yeah, it's gone very, very quickly. So you're right. I think initially 80 films from our own collection. And then with partners, we've got about 25 different libraries, content partners that we're working with. So we're very fortunate in that we have good relations, historic, with companies such as Something Weird Video, Vinegar Syndrome in the United States, AGFA, the American Genre Film Archive. In Europe, we've been working strangely with a lot of film institutes. So we've got deals with the British Film Institute, the Danish Film Institute, the Hungarian Film Institute. And the amazing thing is, for example, from Danish Film Institute, we have these beautifully restored old sex comedies from the 70s called the Bedside series, 8 of them. So they're quite cute. Yeah, they're quite tame by today. But they were a big deal in my parents' time, and there's definitely an audience for them. And the fact that a Danish Film Institute can provide these to us, beautifully restored in high definition, looking absolutely gorgeous, makes us very, very proud. We're making smut fashionable and acceptable.
No, that's perfect. I mean, you've got so many partners right now. What is the basically, I don't know, the secret to that? Is it your great experience in cinema distribution, or is it I don't know, the power of the community? And I think that's the one we should definitely press on, because I know that you're responding really well to all the requests, and even though you grew up so fast, you're still responding to that, and community is shaping the way Cultpix is growing.
No, you hit the nail on its head. Community is definitely center of this, because we always try to think that we're not just a streaming service, we're really building a global community of fellow film lovers, and for these kind of very, very niche and specific films. And we had a business student, a super smart business student, who came in and he did a quantitative survey for us. So he emailed out questions to a lot of our members and got feedback on how satisfied they are with certain features, with the films, with the ease of being able to contact us. And then he turned into a big presentation, PowerPoint. He sat us down, and the first thing he said is, "You do know this service is not for you." And we're like, "What? But we love it. These are things." And they're like, no. You got to remember, you're doing this on behalf of everybody else out there. And so we've had to take that on board, and we really try to listen to the members, what films they would like to see, what features, how we can change, improve, make things better, make things easier to navigate, what other things they'd like seeing on there. We can't give them everything, obviously, because we have a limited budget and bandwidth of being able to do things, but we do try to respond. And even when, for whatever reason, they decide to leave the cult, can you believe it? Right. There are actually people who do decide they can't stay part of Cultpix. We try to do an exit interview or survey, or at least question. It's like, anything we did wrong or anything we could have done better. And funnily enough, the most common answer is that people say, "No, I haven't got enough time." People are pressed for time. Maybe during the COVID pandemic, when everybody was stuck at home, of course, everybody was streaming their eyeballs out, but now they want to go out and enjoy the summer, whatever, and do other things. Right. So that's fair. That's cool. Our doors are always open to them. Come back anytime. We're not a horrible church that way.
Do you think people are coming back to the cinema?
and cinema. And also we're telling people we're not trying to replace the cinema. We're not trying to compete with cinema. In fact, we're saying, if you get a chance, go and see these films in a proper cinema. And we've had partnerships with real life cinemas where we've shown some of these films. So we had a great partnership with Everyman Cinemas in the UK. In 5 locations, 4 cities, we put on a series of cult films, and we had little introductions by people who are famous in this genre, in this industry. We've worked with different cinemas all across Sweden, in Denmark, to try to show off these films on the biggest screen, where you can watch them in a group and just enjoy them so much better together. So it's not cinema or streaming. They can both happily coexist, and they should coexist, because the films coming out in cinemas today will be the cult films maybe in 20, 30 years time. Maybe not the Avengers, but who knows what's out there that's going to be considered true cult film in the future.
Right. Oh, amazing. I mean, I absolutely love your approach, but I think for the founders out there, it would be really great to touch the point of communication just a little bit more.
Yeah.
So since you're so open to communication, and to be honest, I haven't seen much of marketing campaigns or anything from Cultpix. So
Yep.
how do you do that? How do you communicate? How do you keep track of what your customers want, and how do you keep this tight community?
Well, let me start by saying, as soon as we launched, we heard from a few distributors wanting to sell us their films. We heard from a lot of fans, and we had a lot of data companies coming knocking on our door saying, we've got the algorithm that'll, do everything for you except for coffee in the morning, effectively. And I know that there's a big thing about being data driven, getting recommendations, whatever the Netflix algorithm serves up to you next before the credits have even started rolling on the last thing you watch. We didn't want to be that. We tried to initially say, well, we want to listen to our fans. We want to engage with them. And also we want to be curators. So yes, it's not our service, but we have certain tastes and things that we'd like to share. And then we see what works. So we are looking at metrics. We are looking at which films are the most popular, which genres tend to be liked. Certain ones didn't do very well. When we do theme weeks, so for example, biker films, blaxploitation films weren't hugely popular. You might not be surprised to know that nudie
Absolutely
films,
not.
they tend to, have good metrics, but we don't just want to do that. So if we're purely data driven, there would be nothing but boobies on the site, and we don't want to do that. There's got to be kung fu, and there's got to be spaghetti western too. And we just have to make sure that people learn how to enjoy those films as well. And here's the thing that really your question touches upon, because we aren't a big streaming service. And even for somebody like myself, many of these films will be the first time I've seen them, or even first time I've heard of them. So it can be very off-putting if you scroll past and none of these films are familiar. The poster might look fun, but where do you begin? So we try to create entry points and access points to it. And the way to do that is we do organic type of marketing. We haven't bought much any kind of social media marketing. Instead, what we do is we try to share the insight and the passion for these films through obviously social media, primarily Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we've got a slightly older audience. Probably there are members in the 20s and 30s, but we're not hitting the TikTok generation. It's something we should get around to, haven't done it yet. We're also doing a newsletter, a surprisingly overlooked, or it's starting to be appreciated again, marketing and campaign tool. But we've done over 50 of them, and we have opening rates in excess of somewhere between 35 and over 40%, which for a commercial newsletter is very high metric, I know. We've got a podcast as well, where we've also done almost 50 episodes, and we've had guests on there, and we play clips and trailers and funny interviews with other people who come on the show and talk about it. So it's organic marketing. I'm sure we could have thrown a ton of money at keywords, etc. But we're not doing that yet, maybe at some point in the future. But it's because, and we'll probably get into it, it's the fact that we are self-funded and we are bootstrapped. And so we have to account for every penny or cent or whatever, because it comes from our own revenue or from our own pockets. Nobody else is going to give us that money. The last thing I should say on the marketing and the channels is the biggest difference we've had recently is when, again, this was thanks to collaboration with our wonderful IT team, that we were able to make Cultpix visible on the websites that are guides for people to find films, primarily Just Watch, but also Letterboxd and Playpilot. So when somebody wants to, say, find an old film, let's say Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, they go to Just Watch and they see, well, you can rent it on Amazon for this much, or you can watch it for free on Disney Plus. Well, for the kind of films that we have, which are kind of very obscure, Googling them might not lead people to us, but Just Watch and Letterboxd does, specifically for the hardcore film fans, provide an easy way to find us.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely love your approach. And I think not a lot of startups, not a lot of founders actually live that way. They're kind of afraid of posting, of getting it out there. I don't know what the family is going to think, what my high school teacher is going to think. So it's great. And I know that you've been writing for a while, you've been in the industry for a while, and you're very active on social media as well. So does your personal brand help in this journey with Cultpix?
It probably helped to some extent. I think even more so, my partner, Rickard, in Sweden. I should give him a big shout out because he's slightly older. Although you wouldn't guess it from him, he's got more energy than I have. And he's, tireless, really. And in terms of engaging with other distributors and rights holders and communities, whether it's a VHS collectors forum or it's the film festival for archive films that's held in Lyon every year in France. So being able to reach out to that community helps tremendously. In our case, also because we needed to start out with lots of films. We didn't have enough rights to films ourselves, so therefore we had partners. And his connections in the business meant that they knew him well enough. So when he came with a proposition of saying, hey, we're going to build a streaming service. We have no experience whatsoever in technology. We published DVDs and VHS, but we think we can make this leap into Brave New World all on our own without taking on board any funding or even hiring a CTO.
Right.
They didn't look at him and say, yeah, you've definitely lost the plot now. The other important thing I should say is that there's a lot of trust built into the relationships with your supplier when you're a founder or a startup. In our case, it's the rights holders to the films. And we came to them with a proposition of saying, you should be making money from the first member we have, from the first monthly fee or annual fee. You should be getting a cut of that. So we work on what's known as a revenue share basis, which means that a certain percentage of the revenue goes to the rights holders of the film. That's different from a profit share where they say, okay, you can get half the profit and I'll keep the other half. The problem with startups is most of them don't tend to make a profit. Amazon took 15 years. I don't know if Netflix ever made a profit. But in Hollywood accounting, there's ways of making sure that you never make a profit so that you never have to pay anything out. But with revenue share, you're guaranteed. So you see our books, you see how much money we made, and you get 25 or 50 cents on every dollar divided up based on how many times people watch a specific film. But most distributors prefer to sell their films on what's known as MG, or minimum guarantee. That means that I pay you, let's say $2,000 for a title. And then if it gets a lot of views above that, then I'll pay you more than that. But if nobody watches it, then too bad for me having paid you, but you're still getting some money. So it's a big leap of faith to say that, give me your product that you're selling elsewhere on DVD or Blu-ray, or letting somebody else stream for you, and we will pay you, but only based on what the income we get, and the split based on how many times your film gets viewed. trust is a huge part of any startup culture in those critical key relationships with your closest partners.
Right. Oh, yeah. I love where we're going with it, and I know you don't mind me asking about that. And yes, I'm going to just dive into this fact that you're bootstrapped. Yes, so you've had some time to put the fans aside for this project, and as I know, the approximate price, it wasn't too much, but still, you know, you have to absolutely have some funds to start that. And another thing is, you're talking about trust, you're talking about different business models, and you're talking about the relationships between the rights holders, and this comes from experience, and you've got a ton of it. So of course, this is a startup and you've had some learning curve here, but would you say it was easier to start this project a bit later in the days?
It was definitely easier to be a middle-aged startup entrepreneur, I would say, for a number of reasons. And again, if you're in your 20s and watching this, there's not much I can do to sort of fast forward you to that, but I can share my experience and hopefully also inspire people who are thinking about a career change and or maybe going for something they've dreamt about all their life. I've worked for huge corporations, American corporations. I've worked for other startups and small companies. So I've seen both sides of the coin. I've been both a journalist, consultant, analyst, and business development. So I've been fortunate to experience the business from many, many different sides. And that obviously gives you its own set of insights and experiences that you can tap into. Being middle-aged, then hopefully you don't have to have the financial worries, or hopefully you've been able to pay down enough of the mortgage so that you can afford to say, right, well, I'm going to take a year out, see if this works. And if it all goes completely arse up, then hopefully somebody will still hire me or my expertise can be used elsewhere. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that hopefully you've made enough mistakes in your previous career that you don't have to make them all over again for your own startup company, and that you can benefit from that wisdom in terms of things. Also in terms of how you negotiate with people, how you work with staff, with colleagues, all of that goes into it. I would probably say the biggest experience is that you learn that things will go wrong inevitably at some point along the journey of setting up a company or running things. And if you've had a 10, 20 years of work experience or other life experience, then you know not to panic. And hopefully you've got the both emotional tools, but also the practical capabilities of handling that. So there were a few, like I said, we didn't have any huge problems in launching Cultpix. We did have hiccups along the way, and some of them very, very close to launch. You know, suddenly we get a second audit by the payment platform, and we know that there's been a crackdown on certain type of website recently, given the fact that our website has not only boobies, but it even has, shall we say, naked people hugging. So you got to remember, these are 50-year-old films. There's really nothing that's considered, you know, very outrageous by today's standards, yeah, but still. Yeah. So we have to be doubly sure that we comply with everything in terms of regulations. And so we have to make those adjustments, and we have to realize that things can happen, and we just deal with it by communicating. And really, communication is the key to it. Recently, we had an issue. We had a member in Spain, couldn't get Cultpix to work, couldn't get the films to stream. We tried everything. What browser are you using? Have you updated the software? Have you tried restarting it? What device are you watching it on? In the end, our clever IT team discovered that Cloudflare is for some reason being blocked in Spain alongside websites like Pirate Bay. And Cloudflare is a super legitimate. There's nothing illegal about it. There might be some dodgy websites that use it, not us, obviously. So maybe they got blacklisted for that reason, and I'm sure it'll get resolved. But in the meantime, unfortunately, our members in Spain are not able to access Cultpix unless they have a VPN. But the important thing is not to panic. Communicate with your IT team, with your customers, be open, over communicate if possible, and don't just stick in the sand and things that it'll resolve itself, or there's nothing you can do about it. The best thing you can do is just at least hold up your hands and say, we're trying, we don't know what it is, but we're not giving up, and we're going to keep working on this until we fix it, hopefully.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there goes your trust, and communication, and I think it works best in every aspect of a startup. But let's get back to the issue that you mentioned. Or not an issue, but quite an important point, that there are films of naked people hugging, and in a lot of countries it is forbidden. So how did you deal with that? Because you said you are streaming in 195 countries. So how does that work? How do you go around it?
So we made a decision from day one or even day zero, this is going to be a website or streaming service for grown-ups only. So it is not accessible unless you're over 18. It's not accessible unless you've got a credit card. We put a few free films on the front page that anybody can access. Those films do not have boobies in them. They're fun, but if you want the boobies, you're going to have to pay for it. There's a SMS login as well. So, you need to have a smartphone to be able to access that, to get the SMS code. We put measures in place to ensure that people who shouldn't access the website won't have an easy time accessing the website. Obviously, anybody with enough determination can probably do it, but we want to do everything that's within reason to ensure that only the 18 or 21-year-old plus who have subscribed to the website are able to watch the films. And also we tell people, hey, if this isn't legal in your country, you probably shouldn't be doing this, but we're not your parents. So we have to trust that you. And ultimately, some countries, like I said, 195, I don't think we can be accessed or enjoyed in North Korea. I'm pretty sure the Great Firewall of China is doing a good job of keeping us up. And I haven't heard about any members in Iran or Syria. So chances are those countries could be out as well.
Okay, all right, but I just heard that you are working on restricting some content in certain countries, and I think it's
yeah, inevitably we have to do. That's one of the features we had to introduce. We didn't have it initially, but we have to have what's known as geo-blocking or geofencing, which means that certain titles can only be watched in particular countries or territories, or they are excluded from those territories. And we hate doing this, but sometimes we don't have a choice if we want to have those films at all because of the way that the film rights are sold. So unfortunately, it's a very fragmented market. So if you're a film distributor and film producer, somebody might say, I want to buy this for, let's say, Latin America, but it has to be exclusive for it because people should subscribe to my service or buy DVDs from me and not be able to get the film any other way. So then we have to say, okay, then we have to exclude Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, all of those. Or somebody says, I can give you this title. So for example, we've got some Japanese titles coming up. Unfortunately, we will only be able to get those titles for Scandinavia, where we have a big part of our membership base, but not everybody. So it is very frustrating because I've been on those streaming services where I've seen something or try to watch something and it says, not available in your territory, mate. So as a rule, we try to avoid that. But the reality of the streaming market today is some films, either you will have to geo-block them or geofence them, or you won't get them at all. So the only thing we can say is that over, I'd say, almost 95% of films on Cultpix are available pretty much everywhere.
That's amazing. So, you guys have a chance to watch pretty much all of it. Yeah, okay. I would like to also go back to bootstrapping because, it kind of makes sense in a way that you hold the entire power over the project, but at the same time, you have again, such trust from your partners and from the community. Why not try and go all out, get the investor, get a ton of money, and just grow inevitably and, take the Netflix out?
Yep. I know Netflix has lost subscribers. I think 1 million the last quarter. I can't claim that most of
They're
those.
up for grabs.
I would have loved, yeah, definitely. All of the refugees from Netflix happily accept them. But on a more serious point, yes, there is value in bootstrapping. Look, I'm not saying bootstrapping is for everybody. It depends on what your ambitions and what your means are. We were fortunate that we had a windfall, which we could have paid ourselves, but we always have this stupid tendency of, as soon as we get someone who would say, hey, let's do something fun with it, like let's start a publishing company. So one of the other things we've done is we publish books as well. On similar kind of topics. We did a book on the old Swedish exploitation film posters. So the guiding philosophy of the company has always been that as long as we're not losing money and we're having fun, then we're doing okay. We've both had day jobs that have kept food on the tables and sort of kept the lights on as well. So we've been able to do this. Now we have to get more serious. This has become more of a full-time job. And so what that has meant is we've had to look at the finances in terms of A, getting the whole thing up and running, and B, being able to keep it running while paying out our partners for content. So they have to get a check every 6 months. And that's, frankly, to me, the happiest time is when I'm signing a check and saying, this is what you're going to be getting for your films, because that, to me, demonstrates that we have created value. I'm also thrilled whenever somebody mentions us or a film that we've got on social media. But the fact that they renew is validation enough for me for that. So when you're bootstrapping, what it means is effectively is that you are fully responsible for all your profits and losses, and that makes you extra, maybe not cautious, but mindful and focused in terms of where that investment should go. So we're much more focused on how do we prioritize developments, which features do we want to launch with, what's the minimum viable product for us to launch with, which are key things to come next, and which are nice things to have. And some things turn out to be not that much used or not that useful. So inevitably, not everything is you're going to get it right. But focusing minds by being able to know that you're only going to have that income stream that's coming from your user base to fund your ongoing operation, unless you want to keep digging into your own pocket. And frankly, I don't want to do that. Happy enough to do it to get the project up and running. After that, I don't want to be subsidizing it. We might not be paying ourselves yet, but that's part of the road plan, because we're investing the money back into the company, and we'll continue to do so. Because if we have the choice between taking, let's say, $1,000 or $10,000 and putting in our pocket, or buying more films, buying more rights, adding more cool features to the website, maybe even buying some AdWords or some Facebook adverts, we'll of course go for the second option, because at this moment, that's what's right for the company. What it does mean, though, is that you forego the kind of sexiness that comes with a investment and evaluation. When we launched, we put together a panel of advisors. These are basically old friends and colleagues, people in the industry experts, including my former boss from when I first started out. And he's a global authority on streaming, name of Ben Keane, who I worked with at Screen Digest. And he said, just because of the fact that we actually now have a product, we actually have a running, functioning streaming service with subscribers, with content, we could go out there tomorrow and get, I'm not going to say 10 millions or 100 millions, but we can definitely get a big sum of money if we wanted that for further expansion. However, if we do
Ferrari.
We'd also be giving up control because we'd have to be accountable to an external partner. We'd have to have quarterly targets. We don't know if we'd meet them. We're growing organically, but we're not growing at rocket speed. Would they be impatient? Would they want an exit strategy? That it's all nice and well to hear about the kind of startups that get big investments and big valuations. Although a lot of them also things go horribly wrong. Need I mention Theranos? But then you have companies such as MailChimp, which recently sold, and that company was completely bootstrapped. So the founders were completely in control and shareholders, and then they exited while staying aboard running it for a huge valuation. So don't feel the need that you're not somebody unless you've got external funding coming into it. You've got your own metrics for the success of the company, whether it's the revenue or whether it's the number of streams or the impressions, but don't get hung up or think that you're not validated until somebody has signed a check, because with that check comes a handcuff as well, and bootstrapping frees you of that obligation.
Right. And I just remember you said, as long as we have food on our table and we have fun, we're happy. But you're also talking about keeping the metrics and, keeping, making sure that you still keep track of your spendings. And, I think there was two a bit different points, but how do you keep track of it? How do you make sure that you got all the features, only the features that you need? And how do you make sure that you have your team, and I know it's fully remote, even your co-founder lives in a different country. So how do you make it work? And how do you keep track of all these transactions and make sure you're all on the same page and are not going to basically spend anything you don't want to spend?
No. Number one rule for a startup: get a good accountant. Really. Okay. We had an excellent accountant previously from our previous company who kept a track on us. Sometimes I feel like she's the grown-up in the room, and every month we hear from her. It's like, did you submit all your invoices, all your receipts and everything? And then you realize that you forgot some invoice and receipts, and basically keeping you on the straight and narrow in terms of making sure that all the paperwork is correctly signed and so on. Obviously, some things we've been doing like that ourselves for a long time, so we do have experience, but you do have to find external people for certain roles. And if you're not a huge company, then having an external accountant, auditor, lawyer, not to mention, great IT team, those are things that don't have to be roles within your company, or you multitask yourself, but specifically for those kind of things, and specifically for accountant, you do externally. Secondly, don't get into any contract deals without being fully aware of what's likely going to cost you over the next 12 years. Like I said, because we use off-the-shelf tools for most of what we do, it's pretty quantifiable. So we know what the monthly cost is going to be for using Twilio, for using MailChimp, for using Cloudflare. Again, here you have some variables. Obviously, the more people stream, the more we will end up paying for those kind of streams. But to give an example, we recently did an audit, and we looked at all the films in the last 6 months which had 0 views. When you get up to 800 films, and maybe all the ones we started out with weren't the best ones, maybe even Netflix has some fillers. So we were brutal, and we just decided, right, if no one's going to watch them, it's not that we chopped and got rid of all of those films that didn't have any views, because we thought, no, this is actually a really cool film. We need to go back and promote this one and tell people why they might not have heard of it, but they were going to like it. But that means that we freed up a whole bunch of, I think we freed up about 5% on Cloudflare, which means that we can now keep uploading more films without paying anything additionally for that kind of cloud capacity. So like I said, just have a good accountant. keep track of what it is that you're signing up for in terms of the kind of services, but also it goes obviously for the partnerships. So if we'd had content deals that would have ruined us, if it become too popular, or if we just said, yeah, we'll pay minimum guarantee for that, and instead of making the hard choice of saying, this one is not something we can afford yet. Maybe we can go back to in a year's time. It's a tough choice. We'd love to have this film. We'd love to have it packaged, but we just can't afford it. So you have to delay that gratification and plan on having a ramp, to have a runway in terms of how you're going to take off and what you're going to need to get you flying, and then to keep climbing and climbing and climbing.
Oh, I absolutely love your approach. It's very strange. It's even a bit surreal to talk to founders, especially of an early stage startup, who's that mindful of all the operations that are going on. And yeah, so I wanted to go back to, and of course, thank you for mentioning your IT team so much, because we are absolutely proud to be involved with Cultpix. It's been fun. And whenever we don't have a topic to discuss, there is always Cultpix. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And,
we're definitely the odd one out, I think. But
yes, but it's definitely fun to bring it up. But what I wanted to ask you, and we're a remote team, and how do you keep this communication going? And also, one more important, I think, very important thing is what features maybe you brought to Mars, to the developers that are not there right now, and how did you scale down? Why did you do that? Yeah, basically, if you are happy with what you have now, or there's still, should be butterflies flying around.
Yeah. So two parts. Let's start off with the communication. And it's true. And it does amaze me sometimes that we've never actually met in real life. We've had this ongoing work together in partnership. And I look forward to the day that we do actually sit in the same room or in a bar or restaurant or whatever, and just get to chat about this. But the same thing is with my colleague who's based in Sweden. I'm based in the UK. We see each other 4, 5, 6 times per year, but 99% of the work happens remotely. So it's not only possible, it's very desirable, because it means that we don't have to have a physical office. We keep the overheads down that way. We do have a warehouse where we keep our old 35mm film copies and original film posters and DVD inventory. But as far as Cultpix headquarter, it's in the cloud. It's in the hearts and minds of the fans and the members. So communication therefore becomes extra important. What I really loved about the work we've done with the development team in this is that they've been very accommodating in terms of us, not just in terms of quickness of response time and laying it all out for non-techies like us and explaining and not just dismissing us as kind of technology Neanderthals that I'm sure we can be. But also we weren't forced into saying like, right, well, to communicate, to do this, you need to go on Slack or you need to install this app. Everything has been done pretty much, I think, via email. Every once in a while, maybe there was an instant message or we've had a Zoom conference, but again, 95% email. And in my other day job or in my other roles, I've got colleagues who are forever trying to get me onto Slack because it is the go-to tool. And I know that especially for IT developers and those, it has replaced emails. Emails is the dinosaur of communication, but it's what we used to, and we appreciate that we've been able to use that as our primary means of communication and development and just general channel of communication. So that's, I think, has facilitated really good communication with the team. Now, in terms of the kind of features and tools, gosh, it's such a long list. It's everything from the small things, little details, like we had to say that none of the pictures for each movie, they can't be landscape, they can't be sort of flat, they have to be portrait, like the film posters, because we're going to promote these films using these terrible old, actually, I say that, they're not terrible old film posters. Often the film posters are better than the films themselves. Often they would make the film poster first and then decide whether they're going to shoot the film, which only took them about 3 days for some of them.
Then they're so bad, they're actually good.
Hey, and the special effects are cheap, but people love it anyway. And the posters are super cool. Then we get into more advanced technical things and things on the wish list. Again, some things we've pushed for, which turn out to not necessarily like a commentary field below the films. I don't think anybody's ever used it, but it's there. We can drop in text if we want to. Simple things like having a carousel feature for images underneath. Just having additional fields. And then there's a lot of obviously under the hood stuff. So one of the key developments is in terms of how the viewings are counted. And now we're getting into very technical specifics. And this was, I know, a big feature in development because it wasn't easy. Because to pay our content partners, we have to calculate how many times each film got watched. And then the question is, well, how do you define watching a film? And Netflix everybody has the same issue. Do you have to watch the film all the way to the end? If you've started it and watched it for 5 seconds, does that count as start of a watch? So what we've come down on is the kind of industry accepted norm, which is that if you've watched more than 15 minutes of the film, and I'd swear to you, getting through more than 15 minutes of some of our films is, proof of hardcore film fandom. But if you've watched more than 15 minutes of that film, then that counts as one viewing. And that means that at the end of 3 months or 6 months, we can sit down with a big spreadsheet that we've downloaded and take a look at and see how many times did each film get a viewing, what percentage is that for each of the different distributors. So being able to make those calculations is only because our brilliant development team were able to put in those kind of features that pull down that sort of information, which is not always necessarily easily accessible. So I have yet to come across the time where we threw a request over the wall to, I don't want to name check the wall, but they all know who they are. They're brilliant. And they've never said it's like, no, this can't be done, or, you shouldn't do this. They usually just said, well, if you want this and that, it's going to take this and this many hours or days to develop. So right now we're looking at streamlining the login process. We just heard back and saying, well, that's going to take about 2 days worth of development. So we said, okay, that's fine. Let's go with that. We also try not to put pressure in terms of saying, this needs to happen. It needs to happen yesterday. So we're mindful that we're not top payers. We're maybe not always top priority. We know that there are a lot of projects being juggled at the same time. So we try to have understanding for our development. We try not to yell. Occasionally we yell. We're very sorry.
That's fine. You've got like the nicest developers out there. I mean, seriously, when I see them talk about Cultpix, I would always be like, okay, I would scream already. But they're so nice.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. But yeah, and occasionally we lose our temper because anyway. But like I said, so again, I think that's a function of having open and trusting communication and trust. That nothing is too difficult, and the few times we have had a little crisis, that's when we've had a Zoom call, or we've had some sort of discussion, or we've escalated it in some other ways, but it's always been resolved. I can't think of a single bad experience that would hold up as sort of, no, we've regretted in any way. So we hope that this partnership continues for a very, very long time.
That's perfect. Oh, I'll make all the developers watch it, so don't worry. They'll sit through this one and, longer than 15 minutes for sure. But yeah, that's perfect. I think communication is your absolute, saver in every aspect of working with Cultpix. And I think it's amazing because a lot of founders ask us, like, how do we approach our MVP? How do we make sure we have everything? And the answer is always the same. Go and talk to your customers, communicate, and communication is the key. And at every point, at every minute, whenever you have your morning coffee, just, tune into what your customers are saying. And some people don't believe that. So yeah, I think what you're saying is just gold, because it's been helping you so much.
Yeah. No, it's not rocket science. These are tried and tested method. The one thing I'd add to that is, steal the best ideas from other people. Don't steal their
It's a good
intellectual
one.
property.
Yes.
Don't steal code, but learn from others, be inspired by them. If somebody else has made mistakes that you can avoid making, then by all means, learn from those as well. And realize just what makes you unique, what makes you different, and your product something special. So don't think that there's a cookie cutter template or a certain path that you have to follow, but there's definitely inspiration to be had if you're willing to listen. And that's really the last part of this whole discussion around communication, which is communication is a two-way street. But my father said, we were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we should listen twice as much as we talk. And
that's a good one.
It is a good one. And I haven't been doing that for the past hour, but I do that in my rest of my time. Is I try to listen, I try to learn. You can get so much out of it, whether it is from your members or customers, your partners, because you're always going to have your own agenda, your own thing to sell, your own issues that you bring to the table. But if you can just park them to one side for just 5-10 minutes and begin by listening out, trying to learn, and finding out something that you might not have thought about, you might not even get around to the issues that you were trying to sell, because what you have been able to take on board is so much more valuable in terms of achieving your goals and doing what it is that you're setting out to with your company. I remember I went to a talk with a great producer and distributor who's sadly now dead. And he said that he, in his team, they hated selling, which is not good when you're in the film distribution business and you've got films that you want to sell out there that they didn't quite like, maybe because they're British. Selling is a bit vulgar. Maybe it's something Americans do. They shout about it. So he said, don't think of it as selling, he said. It isn't selling. Think of it as persuading. And I like that. That's a much better. So whatever situation you're in, don't go in there trying to sell or try to convince. Go in there to try to persuade. And the best way to try to persuade is to start off by listening and learning and understanding the other people that you're dealing with, because that is going to help you tremendously in terms of achieving what it is that you want to set out with to do.
Oh, I think that I cannot think about a better way to finish this session. I think, well, I kind of regret that I don't have a third ear, to be honest, because that I enjoyed it immensely, and I think lots of other people did too. But Patrick, it's been absolutely amazing. I think it's great to talk to people who are so passionate about what they do and give it their best, and also are not afraid to communicate and still give a bit of freedom to who they're doing it for. So that's great. Thank you for that, and I think your viewers appreciate it as well.
Oh, again, thank you for having me on and asking these questions. Give me a chance to talk about it and share these things. If anybody is watching wants to get in touch, they can find us obviously the easy way on social media, on our website. And because we've learned so much from others, so we're keen to pass on whatever insights, and if people can learn from our mistakes, so much better if they don't have to make them. And before we finish, I do have to give you the full t-shirt because you've just seen
yes,
the Cultpix, but you haven't seen the monster.
Oh, that's the good one.
Yes, this is from Terror in the Midnight Sun, a Swedish science fiction film from the 1950s, and I think George Lucas stole him for Chewbacca. Years later, so giant monsters. So
absolutely agree with you.
Inspired by the best.
Yes. Okay. And hopefully someday we meet and we'll get the t-shirts as well, because that's a cool one.
Oh, yeah. T-shirts for all of you, I promise.
Yes. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Patrick. Again, it was amazing, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you, and take care. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Have a fabulous
Bye.
weekend. Bye.